is in Arizona, on his way back from Arizona. All right, it's 1 o'clock, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, February 27th meeting of CCWD. Would you all rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Director Cicada? Here. Director Radaman?
Here.
Director Underhill?
Here.
President Thomas?
Yes, I'm here.
And Director Davidson is absent today.
He is on his way home. Okay, at this time we have public comments. If at this time any member of the public can address the board on a non-agendized item, the public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration, and no action can be taken on items that are not on the agenda, and the comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Looks like we have one member of the public. Joe, do you have anything for us today? No. Well, you might as well just leave then. No, I'm glad to see you here. Enjoyed seeing you last night too. Okay, the consent agenda is the following item. That's agenda item number 3. They're expected to be routine and non-controversial. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion, and any board member may request that an item be removed for later discussion. Today we only have one item on the consent calendar.
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Would you please call the roll?
Director Cicada?
Yes.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, moving on to new business. We have item 4A. We have discussion and action on the purchase of real property, APN 044031012. And Mr. Meyer is here to give that presentation, I think.
I thought I'd bring everything with me since if you look down the agenda, other than Peter later on, it's my show. I actually wanted more items, but Michael said no, it's his meeting now.
Welcome, Michael. He's going to be reined in a little bit, huh?
There's no rain here. The item before you today, item 4A, is discussion action on the purchase of real property, as President Thomas mentioned, and it is APN 044032012. For reference, it's a property directly behind you. And I just wanted to give you a quick summary of how we got to where we are today. Because I know Director Cicada has not been here long enough to realize that the temporary mechanics maintenance shop that we have at the end of Pool Station Road was only occupied within the last year. Prior to that, there was a maintenance facility up at Hunter's, which was a one-room area where they had to pull the truck out and pull all the equipment out and tools out to be able to work on something inside of it. The other was a shed down at Jenny Lynn Water Treatment Plant that was basically a building, but there was a lean-to on the outside, basically a canopy, to shelter the vehicles that Mike was working on. Totally inadequate and also not the safest of all environments. That kind of got us going into looking at a centralized maintenance facility. And then Director of Operations, Teresa Tanaka, myself, members of engineering and facilities, we started looking at different options, visiting different sites. TUD, Director Davidson pointed us to Jackson Rancheria and others to go ahead and take a look at what's best suited for our needs. And that's where we are today. There's been starts and stops. We've looked at things. Your board last year asked us to look at other properties within this business area. across the street here in Caddy Corner. Both of those lots were less expensive, but they provided challenges with grading, tree removal, and in that particular instance, the drainage ditch that goes down through almost the center of the property would limit the amount of space we'd actually have. So in looking at this, we've looked at different options. One of the things we did, we took into account what types of building we're going to need on the lot, the price of the lot, access to utilities, and there is water and PG&E right next to the lot on the street here, right there for us. Lot size and topography, as I mentioned, there'd be a lot of grading on those two lots across the street in Candy Corner to us, and necessary site improvements and proximity to this building. So based on that, we selected engineering, administration, and most importantly, utilities, which is, Damon was part of this process, figured that this is a site that we need to, will fit our needs moving forward, because it's not the site where we're going to keep a lot of heavy equipment. Those will be maintained at the sites in Copper and in Jenny Lynn. We're not planning on moving anything down the hill from West Point or Ebbets Pass. We talked to your board on several occasions. Your board authorized us to start negotiations with the individual who owns this property. Robbie was in charge of those negotiations. What they agreed upon was $185,000 plus a split of closing costs, which was within the range of our discussions. I did have Robbie pull some information on that property, some title information, and just for reference point, the tax information from 2016 gave that a land value of $180,872, which was 2 years ago. So we're fairly in the ballpark. 2011, we purchased these two lots here for $160,000 each, and then we merged them. So it's within that ballpark that we're looking for.
Can I interrupt 1 second, Jeff? With that type of backup information, would that in and of itself preclude the necessity of having a commercial appraisal? Is that close enough to establish value? Or?
I think so. And I don't know if there'd be any value added. He's pretty adamant about 185. And since it's within 2 years ago, the tax, and they go up 2% each year, I think we're within $1,000, maybe $2,000.
Okay. Well, the only reason I mention that is because of fiduciary responsibility, that just wanted to have that covered. If somebody said, well, why didn't you have it appraised? So that's the answer I was looking
The
for.
appraisal will probably exceed the difference in the,
That would cost more than.
right.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Property tax.
What did they pay in property tax? The bill in 2016 was $2,084. And this is public record, so we do have this if somebody is interested in finding out if we did our due diligence.
Okay, thanks.
But I appreciate that. I was worried that that was mine. So at this particular point in time, I do have Robbie here to answer any questions, and Damon is here too, to give you some vision about what he would like to have on that lot.
Right, okay, I have another question. You were talking about not bringing heavy equipment down, where you would leave it at Hunter's and leave it in Copper or whatever. But at one time, we talked about this being a central location for delivery of supplies. Are we still planning to do that as part of this, warehousing of a lot of supplies here?
Yes, it is, and it was mentioned in the staff report. We looked at different options of 1 or 2 buildings, and I think we're going to be settled on 2 buildings. One for maintenance and the other for warehousing, and also for utilities for the field crews to come here. The large vehicles would only come down here in case of repairs.
Right, right.
And Damon can better answer that as far as what his vision is, but we do plan on having a warehouse and purchasing. We will not be storing chemicals here. because every place we have chemicals, we have to have a hazard mitigation plan that has to be updated and filed with the county. So it's easier for us to actually have those chemicals delivered to the plants, and we've got decent deals with the chemical suppliers that we get bulk, but they just go ahead and deliver it to the different plants.
Jeff, adding to what Bertha said about leaving some of the larger vehicles up there for maintenance, I heard you say. So why would you feel that would be more efficient to do it there instead of at a new place that we're building here?
Part of that is logistics, and part of it is miles and wear and tear on the vehicles.
Okay, and then,
When we're talking about VAC-ons, we're talking about a $500,000 piece of equipment. And driving those up and down the hill, it's, and the number of the VAC-ons that we plan to have those located at the different plants, different sites. And that's where we feel that it prolongs the life of these pieces of equipment.
so we're looking at more of the everyday vehicles, more of a maintenance yard for that here.
Yes,
Okay.
we're talking about the trucks and pickups of 1 tons and things like that.
Okay. And the other thing, you said that you went and looked at other sites, you looked at TUD and somewhere else. And so the size of TUD is so much larger. Have you done a site plan for this location to make sure, in fact, it's going to fit for the amount of time before, I guess we could, you know, enlarge, buy more property? But why do you feel that this lot will be an okay size when you've been comparing it to TUD?
When we looked at TUD, we were looking at their maintenance building to make sure we learned from their mistakes what they said and what we really need. And the biggest thing we need is to be able to drive through heavy equipment. We've looked at that. We've had our drivers out there with large vehicles. We know what our turning radius is, and that will fit on that lot without any problem. As far as TUD, they do a central location not only for their maintenance, but also all their service items. And they do park a number of their larger vehicles there. So we don't believe we need to do that, and we have plenty of room. And Damon, you can provide some more information on this that will allow us to meet those needs. Now, we will always have a need to have some storage of some parts and things at the different sites, especially if you're talking about up the hill, because that's just the nature of it. Because if those guys need a repair to repair something in the middle of the night, or they need to be able to have access to those items. So it's going to be a bifurcated system, not a truly centralized one courtyard servicing the entire district.
Because one of the things that I've been thinking about that same thing with TUD, you know, think of TUD in relationship to what CCWD is. I mean, you know, we have Sonora, we have Jamestown, we have Cold Springs, right? All there. And us, we are in 5 separate locations. I mean, we're like satellites. So there's no, I know Russ is getting ready to say something, and that's how I feel about it. You know, I think that the plan that they've come up with meets our needs.
And one of the things that I did not mention is there are times when they get call-outs at night and on weekends. And it doesn't mean they're going to be here, because some of these people have their take-home vehicles to be able to respond. And if they have a situation in Copper where they're having, especially in sewer, where there have potential overflows in the lift station and such, they need to have that equipment close by. And I'll let Damon speak to that.
And this might be for Damon right now, but
Sure.
have you had time to write out your plan, your idea of how you propose to use this building?
For the most part. So my thought is we have enough real estate incorporating the lot here to put in a warehouse and put in a shop. And that provides us storage for material that can be used throughout the district. So we can essentially become the store for CCWD, and maybe perhaps at some point in time in the near future, we can get a purchasing agent that can mind that store. So then we can have staff that can come through here, We can optimize the best price for material and equipment, purchase that, store it on site. We can have a shop. This site facilitates the opportunity to have a shop where we can bring equipment in for repair. I feel it's important for the support staff. So we're talking about the electricians, the collections crew, the mechanical crew, and construction to have workstations nearby the administrative office so we can talk real time about issues that are occurring as they crop up in the morning. So whether it's in the warehouse or whether it's in the shop, it's important to have a ready room so we can sit down and discuss. And perhaps in that ready room, there are workstations for that staff. Now, when you start to talk about the size of Calaveras County and the breadth of infrastructure that we have all over, and to contemplate bringing distribution staff from Ebbets Pass and even from Copper and Rancho, in my opinion, and then water and wastewater treatment plant operators here to simply sit down and do a brief to leave, to go back to where they came from, that's problematic. So I do see keeping the facilities that we have throughout the county as an important component to obtaining the size of the piece of property that we have and putting a shop and a maintenance warehouse on that property. If we were going to discuss or contemplate eliminating other courtyards throughout our service area, then it might be important to talk about expanding the property here.
Has anybody worked the numbers per se? We have a $550,000 budget, so if we spend this $550,000, how much are we going to save or not save? And to be able to look at those numbers and say, is this really the smart thing to do? Is it better to do that instead of just rent the $3,000 and then keep the satellite? Has that exercise happened?
I have not run those numbers.
Does anybody feel that's important?
One of the things we looked at is, one of the things we did look at is the advantages of Damon and his crew coming together at one location to start their day. I can't put a dollar amount on that, but there's time saved in pulling the resources together and Damon saying, okay, this is what we're going to do today. Since we have limited staff, but they're spread out over different service areas, he can allocate those resources much better. We do anticipate savings from working on the vehicles ourselves. We spend a tremendous amount of time transporting vehicles down to Stockton Ford and other places, which requires 2 people to drive down, 2 people to come back up the hill. There is savings when you talk about warehousing, which we're looking at being able to do, purchasing, but to pencil out each individual dollar savings, no, we have done that. And as far as the budget that we see, if we have $552,000 in the admin building fund, take away 187, we're at 365. Jeff Davidson, in earlier discussions we had last year, he's looking at between $200,000 and $250,000 to put up the building. So there's going to be site prep, because it's going to be a metal building.
But I think you should clarify that Jeff Davidson is offering his opinion. He's not going to build it.
No, this is true. I want to be clear that Jeff Davidson is not building the building. It's using it from his experience in the industry. And when we look at this particular piece of property, site prep should not be that difficult, because what we have is, even though it's sloped, it's level, there's no trees, which we'd have to take down. That's a big issue. Grading is not going to be that difficult. So yes, is it going to be a very tight budget? Extremely tight, and we're making sure we only spend money as needed.
Well, I also want to make sure that purchasing this and investing, it sounds like a great idea and something really needed, but I want to make sure that we all do our due diligence to make sure this is the right purchase. And I heard you say, well, you need a place for Damon meets with his guys, or the staff, excuse me. And, but yet we have all these satellite places. So are you expecting them to drive down? Is it once a week, or does everybody meet here and then go to their respective sites? I don't know how that day-to-day routine adds up, but.
Yeah, well, for me, the way I envision a shop or courtyard, for lack of a better term,
I like
here
courtyard.
is that I have the opportunity then to kind of pare down, because right now, without a couple things in place here at CCWD, it's really hard for me to get my finger on the pulse of what's happening real time, especially in dynamic situations like the storm emergencies that we had. So one thing that this helps for me is it allows a good portion of the staff to be on site, so where we can meet real time. And as things change in the morning, every single morning, we can meet and discuss, hey, this happened last night, that broke. So I'm not receiving so many phone calls, emails, or text messages from the remote areas out in the field of, hey, there's an issue here, there's an issue there. We can all sit down, electrical, mechanical, and construction, and discuss real time the issues that are occurring, and it's quicker, and it facilitates our ability to deploy staff from those departments in a quick and easy way. So, because right now it's, okay, I'm off the phone with you, let me call this person, let me drive over here, touch base with this person to make sure that this occurs. So this kind of helps pare that down. We can all meet on site, and really a great long-term benefit is the ability to have material and equipment on site, and the ability to take a smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicle to one of our service areas to pick up a larger piece of equipment to go complete work in that area. You can drive a Ford Ranger from here to Copper, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that sounds good. So like when you have an operator at West Point Water or wastewater, an operator there, and let's say they live in West Point.
Yep.
Is it the routine that the operators just go to the treatment plant?
Yep.
And then perhaps you have a supervisor there, so maybe you would be meeting with the supervisor centrally here? Because
So-
somebody's always gonna be there for the most part, right? At the
Correct.
treatment plant?
Yeah, so for that example, you would be absolutely right. We would have a plant manager and he and I work very closely together. He would be here, perhaps they had a phone call in the morning, and there's an issue that they need mechanical help with. So what happens now is I might drive down to the shop because the mechanics aren't by their cell phone or desk phone because they're working on a piece of equipment, and I might have to say, hey guys, we have this going on in West Point. Can you stop what you're doing and go meet up with the operator and knock it out? Something to that effect. Whereas in this situation, all of that is streamlined. All our ability to kind of meet real time, discuss issues real time is streamlined.
I have a point, and I'm listening to what Cindy's saying, and so I want to make sure that we are very conscious of our costs, because that's the thing that's going to impress Director Cicada as far as
I like planning.
what we're saying by centralizing. How much money are we saving? What are the trade-offs? And does that make sense?
Exactly, and maybe it's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
trade-off, maybe we're at the same. I think for efficiencies, it makes sense to do a centralized location, but at what expense?
Right,
Right.
Is
right.
what I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah.
You know, we do have to talk to the ratepayers and let them know that we got this, we have to sell it to them as well.
Yeah,
Wow.
understood.
So,
And I think there is one, I think Just Point's well saying that it's very difficult to quantify some of the cost savings and the efficiency that we're talking about. There is one though that we know, right, we don't need the warehouse facility that we're currently using.
Right.
It's annual savings of how much?
36,000, but
Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing that we're gonna be doing is selling other properties that are no longer gonna be used. For example, the mechanic shop in the Valley Springs area. That's no longer, where they moved from to get to, when we started renting this building last year on Pool Station, the mechanics are no longer in, what
That
did you
house,
call it?
weren't they in
The
that
hunt-
house?
The Huckleberry, there was a lot near the Huckleberry lift station.
Okay,
that I
and
think
aren't we
that-
gonna be selling that,
I believe.
Yes.
one of the lots there?
Yes.
Okay. And go into the, all right, so there is, and that's, and then also the savings of the rent for the $36,000 annually. We've been talking about this lot next door since we moved here, for several years. It's been on, and we've been talking in closed session for quite a while about centralizing repairs to our vehicles, as well as centralized purchasing for the entire district. The other thing that we have talked about, kind of, not really in a plan, as far as planning, but reaching out to other utilities in the area for purchasing and possibly mechanic work, if it does get to that, when you have a larger facility with a full mechanic staff, which could bring in additional revenues to the district as well, to again offset some of the costs. So there's
that's-
a lot of ideas that are floating out there.
But we can't use that as an offset yet, because.
No, it's an idea.
like, yeah, but,
Conceptual.
in the future, yeah. Do you feel that you've had enough time to really look at this lot, do a site plan, and get your daily plan of how you're gonna use it together?
I was able to kind of develop a wish list and look at the needs and give a general overall assessment of the size of what we may need based on what TUD has and what I experienced at the Amador Water Agency, because we did have a shop on site. That said, I was not an integral part in kind of moving towards that end. However, I recognize the need. So, somewhat.
If I can follow up on that question a little bit. You said previously that this building is located maybe even across the original property line that existed on the two lots that you bought, so you consolidated two lots. Do you foresee doing the same thing with that 1.6 acres, that lot line would essentially disappear, that you would be able to flow off of that property over into some of this area near the oak tree?
That is correct.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think it would
all
have
right.
to.
Okay. Well, I would feel a lot better. I mean, I can count to 3, so I think this is going to get approved, but I would have felt better about jumping in and giving my wholehearted support to this. If I could see the circulation plan that you talked about. There is one thing about, bringing a truck driver out here and say, hey, Joe, can you bring your rig in here and turn it around? But you talked about piping. I mean, I've operated on various properties before in my previous life, and this 1.5 acre net size that would have existed if you don't move the property line. And I don't know what you are going to put on that movement of the property line, because your septic system is very close to the existing property line now, so you're not going to be able to drive trucks and stuff across there. And there's some drainage issues over there that I think that we have to talk about the possibility of putting culverts underneath so that we can park on top of that area. But when you mentioned your work at the previous place where you worked, I don't know what the pipe lengths are that you deal with, but I would really feel more comfortable if I could see a hypothetical traffic flow where the pipe rack's gonna go. You have electrical conduit, and you also have the water piping, sewer and fresh water.
Yeah, generally in 20-foot sticks.
Okay.
With unistrut storage, conduit storage for electrical, right.
Okay, but each of those things, I mean, they all aren't racked on the same rack. I mean, they would be
Separate racks.
separate racks. So the footprint of those racks and its associated traffic pattern for delivery and picking it up in and out. Also, I haven't brought this up before, but I see our vehicles being fueled at places that I can't afford to buy fuel. Are we going to have any fuel possibility here?
We discussed that, and having come from El Dorado County, where they have their own fuel tanks, the environmental issues that they had to deal with outweighed, and the costs associated with that outweighed the savings they would.
Where's John? Where's John?
Probably can you just get John Gomes and see if you, I don't know. if that's-
Seems like it's that,
Huh?
yours
This
is
one's
off.
That's the spirit of that.
Well, I know, because I've had underground tanks too, and I wouldn't be suggesting that, but, well, I solved the problem by buying convault, so you have, if you have a leak, you can see it. It's a double wall above ground tank, but they're fairly expensive, but I think that in the overall cost of the daily operations, I mean, the differential between what you're buying at a reasonably priced fuel gas station versus the high price spread, it wouldn't take long to recoup the value of a convol. Okay, but am I making my concerns clear that I don't?
I don't want to interrupt you, but I.
Well, don't then. Go ahead.
I do want to address that point, though, because I share your concern, and I sat down with Damon and Jeff last week. I guess it's been a week now, right? It feels more like 6 months, but to ask those exact same questions is, are we sure that this lot is going to do what we want it to do? And they have some great ideas. They have put some thought into it. I can see what they're working towards, and that it really would be a benefit. But none of us are engineers, and we're not architects. So my suggestion was that, I had arrived at a point where I was comfortable with the staff recommendation to move forward with this, but that as long as we add, some very strong contingencies to this purchase agreement that allows us to do the due diligence that you're talking about, get some design professionals out here to help us with the layout. And if for some reason we come across an issue where we discover, maybe there's a drainage issue that limits the amount of space that we can actually use the parcel for, and that reduces, what we can use, it makes it too small for our needs. We'll do that due diligence and would not move forward with the purchase if that were the case. So I think we still, moving forward with it today, we would still have the time to do that due diligence and make sure the parcel is going to do everything we want it to do.
If we table this to the next meeting, could you bring to the meeting pretty much the paperwork that shows what our agreement with them is, with the contingencies on it, to share with us, and then maybe bring back a site plan? Or do
You mean
feel
bring
that
the
it's-
actual purchase agreement back?
Yeah, whatever you're typing up there. I don't know if that's important for any of the other board members.
If staff's given their assurances that they're looking into that and we can cancel this project before the close of escrow, I think that's enough for me to move forward.
Well,
So we'd have an exit strategy if it didn't really
Right.
work out.
Well,
But there,
Confidence in staff's ability to do that, as opposed to needing to see it ourselves before allowing to move forward. It's not,
I don't think that getting the design professionals in to put the lines on paper, it couldn't be accomplished in a 2-week period before.
No.
So.
Okay, I'd just like to add, there have been, Damon and Robbie and Jeff have put so much effort into this, and I just want to do everything that's going to make this project work. And I understand what you're saying, Russ, about, all of these pipings and everything, and I understand Cindy's concern. But I have faith in our staff that they have thought of all these things. And
Well, but, excuse me for interrupting, but we've heard Damon say that he hasn't had time to lay out the actual footprint of what we're talking about. And I don't think that's unreasonable for us as decision makers to say, let's make sure, like as our GM has suggested, is it would be written up in a way if we approve going forward today. And
Okay, all right, well,
I don't have
that's,
any, I don't have any problem.
No, I'm not saying, completely go for it, but I'm just saying, let's put all these things in place that'll make it happen,
Is that a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution authorizing our general manager to complete a purchase agreement and accept the grant deed for real property commonly identified as the parcel behind us.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comments on this? Come to the microphone, Joe.
That's gonna crack it.
Sorry, my voice carries.
I've spent a lifetime doing warehousing and transportation.
Oh, right, yeah.
Some questions I have. How large of a warehouse and maintenance facility are you planning for the piece of property? I understand the drive-through, totally agree with that. That's a smart plan, because then you don't have to worry about backing up, running over something. You go out and have basically a circular driveway. Having designed a few warehouses in my time for multinational companies, I know quite a bit about it. I understand the cantilever racking that you're talking about quite a bit, because I designed a place for Home Depot.
Are you available?
I don't know, it depends on my health. But I would be concerned about how large of a warehouse that you have. You're thinking about building it. Have you done a product analysis of what you want to store in that? How many cubic feet are you going to take up? What type of racking are you going to use? All those things determine the size and determine the amount of money it's going to cost you to spend to have your facility.
Yeah. Damon's
That's-
nodding his head, yes.
That's what we, or at least I hope that I had expressed my concerns about that, and we're going to hold you to it, Michael. So, Okay.
Have we decided how much that we want to spend in surveying this land? Do we know how much that's going to be? Getting these design professionals out here?
I thought Joe was going to do it.
Oh, yeah, I'm good with that.
We have had some initial contact with some engineering firms, and at this particular point in time, I haven't gone any further because I didn't want to waste their time and ours without knowing the board's direction. And the other part is, in looking at this, the funds that you're going to be using, there's a budget adjustment at the next agenda item, are restricted funds. They can only be used for one-time uses. They're not coming out of our operating budget.
Right.
So these, if we look at this, from what I've had discussions with engineering and with Damon and with Jeff Davidson, the $365,000 that we have should be enough to cover what we want to do, unless we find something when we bring somebody in to be able to do this work. Right now, what Michael was talking about, our due diligence, right now there's no money budgeted for that. So the budget adjustment will allow us to start doing some of that work, creating a CIP project.
Another thing, Michael, on the, if we were to approve this today and you're going through and doing your work, does it come back to the board one more time with your comments to us saying, okay, we realize we have to do all this grading, that's gonna be, $30,000, are we gonna have those options to make that decision? Or is that something we're giving to Michael to do today, which includes saying, well, we're gonna go forward even though the grading is 25,000 or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Right, and what you're doing today
It's
is only
completing a
of the
purchase
product.
agreement.
What
That's-
we need, the next step then is coming back and with funding, actually budgeting for the construction of the facility courtyard, which will require another budget adjustment. That's kind of what part of this budgetary process when Charles puts together his 5-year CIP, which will come to you.
But let me interrupt for a second before I forget. But this is one of my concerns. We're going into a contract to purchase, and what if during that contract, we find out that the costs are gonna be a little bit more than who's thought of, who has put this number down? And so, let's say it is at $60,000 just to develop the lot, to get us to put a building on it, nothing else, no cement, just grading, let's say. Will it come back to us to say, board, you wanna go forward with spending, not only the 185 purchase and the 2,000 closing, but to get it, to put a building on there, we need to do X amount. Will we have that option or not? And that's what I'm kind of asking.
Yeah. We will be making periodic reports back to your board. After we do our due diligence, we'll be coming back to your board and letting you know that we decide we're moving forward, or based on the due diligence, it's not gonna work. Now, that based on what I hear is the motion, that's what we will be doing. Now, if that's the case and we determine through this due diligence process that we cannot do the entire project for $552,000.
What information do you have that would say why you wouldn't do it after your due diligence? What are you thinking? You know, what do you think is a number that's okay to develop that lot to get it where we need it to be? Are you gonna work within that 552,000 and that's it? That's, I guess, my concern. You know,
Yes, and I believe, based on conversations with Jeff Davidson, with others in the industry, we can develop that lot, including the purchase, for $550,000.
and grading it and everything, even though we haven't had
Yes.
anybody out there yet.
Yes.
Okay, now the due diligence, I'm assuming that it contained within that definition would be the layout, and talk to some environmental person to see if the water that I see sheeting across that property represents an opportunity or a problem. But I heard you say that we don't have money to spend on engineering, so
No, unless we create a project, I'm not moving forward with spending any money, and this is what this,
I don't think we can do the analysis that would be required for the due diligence unless you spend $1,500. I don't know if that's,
I'm not, okay, what I'm trying to say is, we do not have a project at this point
okay.
in the budget. And so we would have to pull that out of operating, we can do that. But what you generally do on a CIP budget is to account for all the costs, you want to have it within a project. So it gets amortized, and it's the accounting side, amortized over some area. Now, what we need to do on that is, we do need to look at bringing in some engineers who are familiar with that type of property and ask them, if we have to pay, we can pay for it. That's already had a net debt filed on this entire area within this development. And Robbie's got documentation for that, so I don't think we're gonna run into any environmental issues.
Okay.
Drainage is one thing, but we had drainage issues on this one as well. And that'll be able to allow us to address both drainage here and up there.
There's a lot more drainage problems on these two lots than there is on that one. I think the main drainage that goes to the lot next door is at the very back corner and would not be even in the parking lot, let alone in the building footprint.
You could catch a trout in what's running across the front. So.
And that's some property we already own.
No, I mean,
But just
over
to
there on that
get
other
to
one.
the-
But this is taking way too much time.
Right.
But Jeff, I admire your abilities with these numbers and everything so much. And I know that at least a half a dozen times since I've been on the board, which is a short period of time, I've heard you bring forward that we need to do this because we're gonna reimburse that fund for expenses that they had out of this fund. So if I don't know how the other board members feel, but if you've got to spend a little bit of money on engineering to make sure that we do it right and make sure that we don't stub our toe, then we need to spend the money. We can't wait until you've got an approved $550,000
And I'm not
project.
saying we won't.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I haven't gone that forward until I know from your board that you want to move forward with this property.
But the last meeting we had was in closed session, and we did authorize our staff to move forward. I think we can certainly advise that at this point of what happened in our closed session. We did vote to proceed with the purchase of this property, and they did exactly that. Robbie has done exactly what we asked him to do.
I agree.
Is to move forward with the owner and to negotiate a sales price within the authority that we provided him. And so that's where we are at this point. Well, I think what we're doing right now is we still have the catch-all, we still have escrow, and we still have verbiage in the purchase agreement to back out at any time for any reason. So that's the kind of the catch-all that I think that everybody's concerned with. We're not making a final decision on this, that we're gonna put a building on and purchase it. We're giving staff authority to create a purchase and sales agreement that's gonna protect us, and then start doing some work on it, spending a little bit of money on engineering and having people walk out there to see what the architectural footprint will be, and if we have enough room to do it, and if the building will house the racks and the circumference for a turnaround that we're looking for. And we will be deleting the lot line, so that building and footprint can crawl onto this property. And I think as we saw in those maps that we had in closed session, that there's a lot more room on the property we already own that can go with that property, especially at the front of it, at the George Reed end of it.
Okay, so what we're doing is giving them the okay for step number 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we
Okay.
And still not
purchase.
tying ourselves into
Yeah.
any $550,000 purchase at this point. We are gonna be tying ourselves into some engineering and architectural fees and maybe even some, cost of getting estimates for the additional part of it.
Okay.
And there's still plenty of time to back out of this.
And just to get to what I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is the bottom of what you're trying to get at in your question. This is a budget adjustment that would cover the cost, the purchase and closing costs. I think what you're trying to do is make sure that we also have the resources available to do the due diligence
Yes.
that we're talking about, right? And I think,
And we can amend that budget adjustment to a higher number to accommodate that. Because the budget adjustment right now is for the sale and closing costs, and we can add, it's $187,000. We can do a budget adjustment that authorize funds from that one fund, the admin building fund, to cover the engineering that you're discussing.
Can you revise your motion to increase that to 190?
Well, he didn't,
That
it
would be
didn't
the
say
next-
it, yeah.
That would be the next
the next-
agenda. item
Right,
for
this
the
is,
budget.
All right.
this is not, this is
Okay, all
strictly the purchase agreement.
Where are my training wheels?
We're just approving the agreement.
Right.
well, and
right.
Jeff, so are you proposing then that would have to be an additional budget adjustment? We don't have any other way to pay for the work that we would need to do the due diligence, right?
It would make sense to make it as part of that budget adjustment, so
Yeah.
it doesn't come out of the regular operating budget.
That makes sense to me too, and it's something I should have clarified before this meeting, but it would mean then, and we don't have estimates on what that's gonna cost, so we can make that adjustment right now on the fly, and I think, I would be comfortable with us, moving forward with that, or we could bring it back if we need to, we can finalize the purchase
Yeah, I'd
agreement
be
and bring
willing
it
to-
back.
But I think
And-
that's item 4B, it's our next agenda item
Yes.
that you were talking about,
And we can up that
not
to
this one.
$200,000.
I
Right.
was, yeah, that's a good figure.
Yes.
Okay,
But this-
any more discussion? We have a motion and a second. Rebecca, would you please poll the board?
Director Takeda?
I'm gonna say no.
Director Redmond?
Yes?
Director Underhill?
Yes,
President Thomas?
With the assurances that we've been given here, and I'll have the tape, so I will vote yes on this. So.
Thank you. The next item is the budget adjustment, and we've kind of talked this at length.
Yeah,
So the only difference would be in the resolution, the attachment for budget adjustment 1905 is to reduce reserves by 200,000 and add 200,000 to the CIP fund in the same amount. And these, yeah.
I move for acceptance.
second?
okay, we have a motion and a second with the increase from 187 to 200,000. Any public comment on this? Okay, would you please poll the board?
Director Takeda?
I'll just say no. Say no to the other part.
Director Redmond?
Yes?
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
I'll be a yes on this, too. Well, do we need to take a break for dinner?
Well, the other two are gonna go very quickly.
You know, I feel compelled to make everybody understand that I'm not opposed to this idea, but I really feel very motivated to make sure we do it right, and so that's why I'm,
And that is my motion, remember? What we can do to make it work.
Well, you know what, like I say, I'm not opposed to it either. I just think a little bit more time to come up with a little bit more presentation to myself would have been more helpful for me. So I'm not gonna,
well,
I just wanted a little bit more
I appreciate
time to
that.
see it, that's all.
if I can see that that 1.6 acre footprint can be expanded by coming this way onto this property to make it close to 1.75 or more, then I think that it'll work. Yeah.
And that is part of the due diligence, is making sure we can clear that property line and combine the properties.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll leave that to Robbie since he merged the lots here and don't anticipate any problems.
I can already tell you there's no problem with doing that.
Let's take a quick
It's
look.
a standard
Check
process
over
in
this
the
now.
county.
You what?
Take a quick break.
The next two items are gonna go very, very quickly, Director Radaman.
Okay.
Wink,
Did-
wink.
So, do you still,
That's fine, that's fine.
are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, he's just said that.
Okay,
Take a break, Russ.
we're gonna take a break?
Yeah.
Okay. 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
C.
This item, staff is requesting that you adopt District's Financial Management Policy 5.01, investment policy. This is a policy that we should be reviewing more frequently than we have now. The last time it was updated is October of 2014. However, there haven't been a number of significant changes recently that dictated the necessity to update the policy. However, in 2018, Assembly Bill 1770 made changes in Government Code 53601, which is one of the basis for what districts, public agencies like ourselves can invest in. What we can invest in is dictated by the State Treasurer's Office and the California Debt Investment Advisory Committee, called CDF. So what we have done is going through our policy, updated to match, provided updates, added some different investment vehicles that are allowed by state law. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to use them, but we updated to match what the State Treasurer's Office says public agencies should do. We also then took a look to make sure that the policy met best practice guidelines formed by the State Treasurer's Office, GFOA, Government Financial Officers Association, the California Municipal Treasuries Association, and the Association of Public Treasurers of U.S. and Canada. We have gone ahead and made those changes. Those changes, I believe you got a color copy, so you've got to see the red line version where the combination red and blue, little on white paper, a little patriotic there. And one of the other items that was done in addition to making sure it met the state treasurer's guidelines is we eliminated section number 5.0107, which is on page 3, and that's the Investment Advisory Committee. That was an on-again, off-again committee that used to meet prior to Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee, and through our discussions, felt that that was unnecessary. The discussions could be held at the Finance Committee level. Besides, the Investment Advisory Committee was only one board member, one committee member. So it was a duplication of work. And we also meet quarterly, or I provide you quarterly investment reports. So through that process, I think we have enough coverage and transparency for your board to see what we're doing as far as investments are concerned. This originally went to the Finance Committee on January 15th, provided comments. It went back to the Finance Committee on February 19th. They provided more comments and questions, and their recommendation is that we submit it to the full board for adoption. And I'm available for questions. And I know you've spent the last 24 to 48 hours going through this diligently, page by page, change by change.
I'll make a motion to adopt the district investment policy update.
And I'll second it.
And if you've gone item by item through this with the finance committee and they've already recommended it, I'm gonna trust their judgment. I'm certainly in favor of it. It sounds like a good policy, what you've presented. And I know they do their due diligence as far as financial matters are related.
Any other comments?
And every finance committees in years past has always done their due diligence. The members of the
Especially with Jeff there. By the way, not only do you provide a report to us on a quarterly basis, your monthly shows us how we're doing as far as our investments, so that's a clear indication if there's a problem or, you know, something needs an explanation.
That is correct.
That didn't help with Lehman Brothers, though.
Oh, haven't we forgotten that yet?
Wow.
Thank you, Russ.
Sorry about that.
Okay, we're at about 46% recovery on that.
That's amazing.
Get that undone.
I don't. It was, but it jumped off. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this? Any further board comments? Okay, seeing none?
Yeah, I do. I just like to see that these policies gone through. This is encouraging that we're looking at old policies and actually updating them. I know we did that with our entire HR
Oh, right.
policies
Yes.
and updated all that stuff. And this is good to see that our financial policies are being looked at to make sure that they're, you know, somewhat close to what we're doing and how we're running things. That's
Okay,
all.
before I call for the vote on this, I haven't asked you in a long time if we're making, if you feel like it's still okay to not have investment brokers come in to look at the portfolio, see if they could do better for us. We talked about that at various times over the last couple of years, so.
With your adoption of this investment policy, I can then provide it to prospective investment counselors to see,
Okay.
under these guidelines, if they can do better than we are. So that was my intent.
Okay, good.
Good,
You
good.
anticipated my question then.
Yeah.
Okay, Rebecca, would you please poll the board?
Director Sapita? Yes. Director Reimer?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Thomas?
Yes. Okay, this item is also approved. Okay, going on to 4D.
This item is a result, or actually was recommended by our auditors as part of the 17-18 audit and a review of our internal controls. 1 or 2 years ago, one of our assessment districts ran short of funds, and we, the district, had to fund some money to them to be able to pay their bills, legal bills and such. And what they recommended is for the district to create a policy that governs those transactions. And what you see before you is that policy. We have a number of assessment districts. Assessment district, the debts of an assessment district is not that of CCWD. It is of the property owners that make up that assessment district, and it's covered by liens on property, the annual assessments. There are times as assessment districts wind down that there are properties that have not fulfilled their obligation. They either are delinquent or at some times going into foreclosure. Depending upon the value of the property, especially those that are unimproved properties, the amount of money owed to the bondholders may be more than the value of the property. So what we need to be able to have are funds available to pay for those type of processes, working with foreclosure counsel. All those costs are rolled into the money that, if there's a foreclosure sale, are generally recouped through the sale process. There may be times in the future where we will need to lend these assessment district money, but this allows us to lend it and charge them interest. And that's what this process identifies. It also, when we talked about this at the Finance Committee, we added a provision at any time there is a circumstance where the district has to loan general fund dollars to an assessment district, then it has to come before your board for approval.
Okay, that was gonna be my question. What fund are you using and you are using?
It would probably come out of interest reserve.
Oh, interest reserve.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
And that provision was added under, let me see here. .14.35, the bottom of page 1, where it says the district's board of directors must approve any loan from available district funds to an assessment district to cover a funding shortfall.
Okay, yes, but as I say, I wanted to know specifically, so.
Yes, it'll generally come out of reserves.
Okay, you know, can you just give me a ballpark figure on what we can talk about, or, you know, a figure, a potential, or you really don't know how much? In the past, what has it been?
I think it's either $10,000 or $12,000 to Lake Tulloch Assessment District.
Okay,
Other than that, I don't envision it, because one of the assessment districts that's coming towards maturity is Saddle Creek, 2006. And what I've been working with Wildan, they're the administrators, is ensuring that we collect enough in the last years of assessments to allow us to have a fund balance to handle the delinquencies and foreclosures, because we have several of them in that assessment district. So I'm being proactive this
Okay,
go-round
okay.
to be able to foresee that based on my experience with Assessment District 604.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the district assessment policy update.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this item? Any additional board comments? If not, would you please poll the board?
Director Segura? Yes. Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
President Fox?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure you've had enough of listening to me.
Good job, Jeff, sit down.
Boy, oh boy, everybody put on your seatbelts. We're going to hear all about groundwater. Okay, next item is under old business. This is a kind of a continuing report that I have asked Peter to make available to us so that the board can know that we're not wasting our time driving to Stockton.
Thank you, President Thomas. Board members, as President Thomas mentioned, there's some reason behind this is that we have a groundwater sustainability plan coming up for your approval at the end of summer, actually. And so part of this is, getting you that information ahead of time as this process is playing out down in Stockton as part of the groundwater sustainability planning process. But secondly, we actually get credit for doing outreach, which is required as part of SIGMA every time I give you one of these presentations. So I know they can be kind of long, but there is also some reason behind that, and we're required to do outreach as part of Sustainable Groundwater Management Act requirements. And so we can just kind of start noting that we're giving these presentations, and then the consultant puts this together to show that work's been done for local cities. So, you've seen this timeline map, and we keep kind of prodding along here. Things have been delayed a little bit, but right now, in the last meeting on February 13th, we were mostly working on sort of project and management actions associated with addressing the overdraft that's been projected for the basin. They're also kind of still continuing to work on improving the data monitoring networks, finding those data gaps perhaps in the basin, and they actually have an application in right now for 3 additional monitoring wells. They're sort of like a nested monitoring well. They go at different depths. One of those actually proposed within the East Side GSA, which we're a member of, within the triangle of Stanislaus County. So just to give you a quick update, there is a groundwater sustainability work group, which I think I've talked to you about before, and they are primarily made up of landowners and other interested parties that are providing input to the larger stakeholder process as part of this. We have some folks from, I believe like Bob Dean is part of that group as well. They kind of, the membership kind of goes up and down and who they actually attend the meetings, but they had 9 work group members attend in January, and they're continuing to meet pretty routinely to go about that. So those meetings are open to the public, and they do provide updates on those as well.
And those 2 members were the ones on the river, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's been showing up to these meetings. I have not attended.
Oh,
actually, so,
okay.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be essentially made up of people that aren't necessarily GSA member agencies or part of public
Right.
agencies. You know, they want that feedback too, you know, because this has impacts on other entities.
So these meetings are facilitated by Allison, or?
I'm not sure. I think it actually may be by the group escapes me that's doing all the outreach,
Okay,
the PR group. I believe they may actually be facilitating.
okay.
So, we
Ex-
had.
Excuse me, I was just wondering if the attendance was, you know, much reduced from that one meeting that we went to, right?
Well, that was,
Just plain old outreach.
Correct, yes, so that's actually,
it's a different,
we actually had the third set of those meetings, there's 3 to 4 meetings, and those are more you're right, those are
Right.
more focused on bigger outreach, and these are specific meetings for the public. So they actually hosted the open house in Lockford. I did attend, and Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Stopper were there as well.
Oh, okay.
And then also, there was quite a few members of the public in Lockford. They chose that location, which seems to be about as far east as they're gonna go on this, I guess. But, you know, it was actually a good turnout, and they kind of went through where they are in the process right now, and a lot of ag interest with there mostly.
Right, that,
So, yeah, I guess this is no longer up to date, but, you know, essentially having this orientation, presentation that they've had in the past and talking about where they're going. So, just a reminder that there are regular updates that are posted on Facebook. We take a lot of those and kind of, you know, recycle those on our own webpage as well and on Facebook. So this is part of the outreach work that they've been hired to do, and we make use of it, including these slides, actually. As I mentioned, projects and management actions are the bulk of the work that's being done right now. So kind of the question that, you know, it's a good question, is what happens if we don't implement these projects, or if we don't come up with projects? Essentially, what you end up with is about 100,000 acre feet of overdraft that would have to be made up by, potentially by curtailments. So you kind of have to go about restricting people's water use, potentially putting meter installations on pumpers that are over 2 acre feet. You know, there's challenges with that. So that's your alternative, it's curtailment. So what the group is proactively doing is looking at projects that kind of turn the tide and come up with ways that we can put more groundwater back into the basin and return some of that overdraft. So right now, there's a list of 31 projects. All 31 of those projects are probably not going to make it into the plan, because, you know, you really don't want to commit to doing 31 projects if, you know, you can get it done with, you know, 3 or 4. So,
can oh, go ahead.
For instance, like Murphy Sanitary, you know, we do the secondary disinfection. Is that water allowed to be used for groundwater recharge?
Yes, there's specific permitting for a lot of that, for groundwater recharge or direct injection recharge. But yeah, I think typically you kind of go into a completely different permitting process.
Is the process really cumbersome and expensive to do this?
It can be, and there's some geological investigations, things that have to be done, but in Southern California, they do it everywhere. And so what you run up against here in the county, for instance, is that you have sort of I think we've kind of talked about this a little, you got these rock outcroppings that kind of protrude out, and it's not as nice as open. So, sorry, let me step back. So when you go into the valley, you have what's called kind of an unconfined aquifer, right? It's just open, and there are, you know, rain here up in the foothills, because you have these kind of striated layers of rock that stick out. You've got perhaps some murkies, you've got a fragmented rock that makes up the groundwater supply. It's not as uniform, and so it is a little more difficult to try to find recharge opportunities in those places. And you can run up against some issues there too, and you just, with people on wells and stuff like that. So.
But the fact of the matter is, nobody is asking for recharge methodology or necessity of recharge at above the elevations that we're talking about in the San Joaquin Basin. I mean, it just goes up so high, and you're exempt from those responsibilities above that elevation.
Yeah, and there's more plays when you talk about wastewater disposal. So I'm kind of off topic here, but there are significant regulations down the valley with regard to disposal of wastewater, and a lot of those are associated with Bay Delta type water quality requirements. And so, because our amounts of disposal are so low up in the foothills, they kind of typically try to almost separate us in many ways from those requirements. A lot of those are associated with nutrients. You have groundwater basins down there that have a lot of nutrients in them from long-term ag discharges and things like that. So, in those cases, a lot of times, they really don't want them discharging that directly out into the delta or other areas, which is why, for instance, Lathrop's a good example. They're looking to do more work to recycle wastewater because they're probably not going to be able to continue to discharge, say, Tracy, another good example, long-term because of the water quality conditions that they may be contributing to. But, up here, we do land disposal, and that seems to kind of be okay with the regional for now. It could change, yeah.
On these 31 projects, I don't see a project involving CCWD and possibility of water transfer for groundwater recharge. Is that a possibility that may change at some day?
Yeah, I believe so, and a lot of it comes down to finding the right project partner in the valley that would work with us on that type of project. We've had talks at times.
With Stockton East? Yeah.
Depends on the day, how long we're getting along. So I do believe that there are opportunities.
So how does that fit into, these are 31 projects that are identified now and are being discussed at the GSA. How does this new project fit in and what is the timing of it, or is it even likely that something like that could happen?
So when we were told to look at projects, they said they wanted projects that were going to be implemented. Because the biggest thing is if this makes it into the plan, it's going to be done, and the state's going to hold our feet to the fire on that. So for us to do kind of more conceptual projects, another one, a good example is we looked at times at converting Wallace Lake Estates to a surface water supply. Taking them off groundwater. It's so expensive for not a lot of difference in the overall water balance.
Right.
So I thought we'd probably get laughed out of the room when they said we're $8 million pipeline to offset a couple hundred feet of water. So we can propose it, but there's things like that could be done. But I do believe that, yes, I think we should stay engaged in the conversation about we have a water supply up here that's available to potentially put back into the groundwater basin. I think we've made that case in our proposal to the Bureau on the Wind Act work. So if there's potential for a contract in the future, some of that water supply that's all in Kiwanis could be set aside.
And Stockton East is, I know, is related to us on the Calaveras. Would they also be involved if it was a transfer coming through the Stanislaus?
Yeah, so they're a contractor.
Okay.
Out of New Orleans, but they don't have a secure supply.
Right.
They're kind of lower on the priority. They're a CBP contractor,
So regardless of how it got there, they'd be involved in.
they
Okay.
have the ability to get water from the Stanislaus.
I was,
Projects listed in priority?
No.
no. Okay, and I was looking at the map, and I was looking at, for example, what looks close to us, and I was looking at number 26 and number 4. whether or not we would have any impact on those?
Those, are you looking at the highway designations?
No, I'm just looking at the project number.
Okay, but 4.
Do you know specifically what those are?
You know, I'm not familiar with every single project here.
You aren't?
Yeah. But, you know, I can get you descriptions of every single one.
Well,
Yeah,
The-
yeah.
If I can touch on the first one on the list, the Farmington Dam repurpose project. And you can see if you know what you're looking at, but see where that red dot is, it has a number 1 in it.
Oh, yeah,
That's
down
right.
here.
That's right at the very edge of our groundwater recharge area. Okay,
Right.
so the thing that's interesting about that one is that I think that the dam, the Farmington Dam, is out of our area, but the water would be impounded within our area. And I keep coming back to this thing, but there's a report that I read that there's 13,000 acre feet of water within that skyrocket pit in Copperopolis that could very easily be, put a pipeline over the hill down to the Salt Spring Reservoir, and it would run down into Rock Creek, which goes in to fill portion or part of that water that fills the Farmington Dam is Rock Creek. So, I mean, that's an easy one.
And you've been pushing on that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, it's gonna take, what, we have 5 years to actually work on the things that will be required to backfill this 100,000 acre feet of so-called deficiency. Nobody could answer the question about where did that come from. Do you know, anybody tell you where the deficiency came from? Is that
It's built into the model that they've developed, and so.
but that was built on a dartboard, wasn't it? So,
Yes, there are some, definitely some potential for some inaccuracies, you know, sometimes you can get up to 20% is kind of a range. I think everyone acknowledges the models aren't just perfect, and they can be picked apart in many different ways, but, yeah.
but to answer your question, the possibility of getting some financial advantage by transfers is very much on my mind, has been from day one, so. Whether I'll be successful,
Yeah,
we'll see.
go for it, Russ.
So, you know, there's a range of projects here that were listed, and, you know, some of them are sort of specific to, you know, direct recharge. In lieu recharge is where you take people off groundwater and give them a surface water supply. Water recycling is one, so reducing the pumping in lieu of reusing recycled water. Then also some kind of conservation and demand management measures. You know, agriculture has a lot of opportunities there for perhaps conserving water. Some intra-basin transfers, which you guys were just talking about. And stormwater recapture, and also some technical studies are in there as well. So right now we're kind of on this path right here where you are looking at the project benefits and identifying a grouping of projects, some themes associated with the projects that may benefit the entire basin, trying to winnow it down to the best suite of projects that will go forward. And then ultimately, we're going to start to look at this at a GSA scale level, and that gets down a little bit further down the road, because that's kind of where we're moving right now. So over the past 2 meetings, the advisory group has started to review the projects and come up with some criteria to assess these projects against. And the projects kind of had a scoring, and the idea was that you start to sort of find certain criteria and group those projects based upon where they fit into meeting certain desirable outcomes. So a lot of those criteria were focused on the 7 different indicators here. And those are implementability, the location proximity to photograph. Some of these areas have large points of compression. Cost per volume, that cost benefit, sort of some environmental impacts, so there's that, that's an opportunity. disadvantaged communities have to be evaluated as part of SIGMA. So that was one of the opportunities. Any water quality impacts and also just overall affordability of implementation. So the group was to kind of set forward with a goal, and that was to assemble these groupings or portfolios of projects. And those themes were kind of went up down by the advisory committee. And essentially the next steps are going to be, which we're going to take on in this next meeting in March, is discussing the strengths and weaknesses of these groups that have been, sort of the directions we've given to the consultant to come up with groupings of the projects, and sort of identify potential opportunities for a hybrid of those to group the best suite of projects into potentially go into the plan long term. So again, these are so you have two sets of criteria. It's like a lot of screening to get down, and some of these are the things that were come up with the advisory committee. So yeah, somehow they're going to have to weigh it against a lot of these desired outcomes. So financing has been kind of preliminarily discussed, and there's two approaches to this, and potentially even there's an opportunity for a hybrid approach. But either you try to package projects and try to finance them on a complete basin-wide scale, or you start to look at the yield and allocations to each of the individual groundwater sustainability agencies to try to determine what's required of them in making those projects as well. So we have not made much progress on this, but this is something that the group is definitely getting a lot of momentum on, and it's been a hot topic and very lot of discussion. It's very sensitive. So kind of talked about the two different options there, and the benefits of basin-wide solution is overall cost effectiveness. You got economies of scale. You kind of want to do SIGMA compliance on a basin-wide scale. It's absolutely required. So you can't argue with that fact if everybody's contributing to a project across the basin. You can be better positioned if you have a large group of folks that are going to seek potentially a lot of grant funding for these projects. And then you kind of reduce the burden on individual entities at a GSA level. And then, obviously there's going to, if you take that wider approach, there's some cons in that you've got to prove up the fact that it's, is verifying that it's making a difference at a basin-wide scale. So, lastly, the situational assessment was done by a third party, and that worked out through that sustainability group I mentioned that was made up of members of the public. And those findings were presented, and a report was laid out. Basically, they wanted to understand sort of stakeholder concerns and documents those concerns, and then incorporate that as feedback in the total process for this groundwater sustainability planning effort. So a lot of recommendations were opportunities for more communication, increasing the time set aside for recapping these meetings, considering options for ways for people to communicate outside of these meetings, and then kind of, I guess they felt like that they were being driven into a process that they wanted more flexibility apparently. So, and then they want a tighter timeline for technical deliverables, and as I mentioned, the attendance hasn't been great, so they're trying to see if there's ways that they can incorporate a way to allow people to drop in and out if they need to as part of this process, which. So, as far as relationship to decision making, they want to clarify how comments from the public and this group will be incorporated into the plan. They need to know, better understand the work that's being done by this work group and what input they're seeking. They're looking to define sort of goals and objectives for that work group, and finding ways to bring other voices into the governance structure. As I mentioned, they're worried about the attendance and making sure that they're getting the voices out there in public, or maybe interested parties that need to be heard. I'm gonna skip this, try to save some time, but, essentially, they're looking at, they've had quite a few recommendations on how to improve public outreach. So, I just wanna talk a little bit about what came out of the last meeting and kind of what's going on right now. At that February 13th meeting, there was a recommendation by several people on the advisory committee that there be a longer sort of pre-administrative review period before these documents for the groundwater sustainability plan start to be put out for public comment. The voices were kind of, more that we may not have enough time, we don't want to be competing against our own selves when it comes to a public document. So, for instance, if documents are not seen by the legal counsel and technical staff of these agencies, then perhaps they would be, dealing with things that they could have fixed before it went out for the total public review. And so, they wanted to iron out those issues before they went public. Basically, the cons to that proposal is that it could potentially push out the timeline a little further. And we're already we've got to deliver this plan to the state by the end of December this year. So January 1st is our deadline. So there's questions about that. Right now, we're trying to leave a lot of time for boards to act and digest this stuff over the summer. So there's some risk associated with trying to do this.
Didn't they come to a conclusion that they would try to help with that by having an additional meeting or two? It seemed like I
Yeah.
remember that.
So we're having a meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's a 5-hour workshop. I will be there with Dave Cameron, our water council, and also your new general manager. And we're going to be talking about how they're going to evaluate the water balance at GSA level, which is going to be key to determining how to proceed with, projects and things like that. So, yeah.
Are you gonna, is this the right time to ask the question at that meeting about, if there is an assumed, an acknowledged 100,000 acre feet of overdraft, how much of it is our east side GSA responsible for? Is it 1% or 1/2 of 1%, 1/10 of 1%? And if you can get somebody to acknowledge that we don't pump groundwater, so how could we be held responsible for 1/17 of the overall, because there's theoretically 17 entities that are involved in this. That has to be answered in black and white about, where is this going?
And you say, well, we're responsible for, you're talking about CCWD.
The county and the groundwater sustainability area. We have to have a plan, and then, there's, throughout his presentation here, there's costs associated with this. So how do we share the cost? We shared the cost of the commencement of this exercise by the city of Stockton, county of San Joaquin contributed 1.5 million or something out of some fund that they've been impounding for years. But it was a $3.5 million project. I mean,
This has been a $2.4 million planning process.
Okay, all right. But our financial contribution from CCWD and Stanislaus County and Rock Creek so far is 11.8.
39,000 total for the groundwater sustainability agency. We've split that
Oh, yeah, that's right.
between Stanislaus County and Calaveras County.
Yeah, okay. Well, you got those numbers in your head, but we had to pay a larger percentage than other smaller entities like Woodbridge and stuff like that, because they have been, their ratepayers have been paying into this collective effort in the valley for a long, long time. So we compromised it, but it was really I don't know, you said you had one time you had $80,000 budgeted for this, and so far it's been 11.
So we're talking about the 39,000 was for the plan, which is due at the end of this year, and then there's the project.
Yeah, so about 75%, I think, or maybe 50% actually, I take that back, was funded by grants from the state. So we had to come up with, actually, you know what, it was because they had disadvantaged community waiver, it was 75% funded by the state.
Yeah, I remember
So
that.
by the agency.
Okay, but I'm not going to be able to attend that meeting, and I'm not sure I'd be welcome there anyway, but somebody's got to try to answer that question, because it's going to be significant for everybody, you know. There should be some mathematical formula for arriving at a proportionality responsibility. We can't be responsible for 1/17th whenever we're pumping the equivalent of 10 gallons of water compared to hundreds of thousands of gallons, so.
You get that resolved tomorrow, will you,
Yeah.
Peter?
So, President Thomas, I think that's exactly what's happening tomorrow. is that
Okay.
They're looking at this at local level, and they're trying to determine what everybody's contribution to the overdraft is. But I do believe there will be, you gotta look at this, kind of compartmentalize it a little bit. This is not a, we get the plan done and we walk away and everybody's happy. There's gonna be some administration that's gonna be necessary long-term, so at a minimum, we're gonna be on the hook for some amount to continue to meet, you know, there's off-ramps for the plan, there's gonna have to be some coordination long-term. And then the big question where it gets really expensive and where the rubber hits the road is, who's gonna pay to fix it? And that's kind of what I think we're heading towards right now.
Okay.
And that's where Director
So-
Thomas's comments
yeah.
come in.
So
come
there
in
will-
Much
yeah.
more, much more, we take a much bigger hit when it comes to that project.
Right. So we will have a chance to come back and,
Yeah, this is gonna be.
okay, so
do.
see,
You're paying
yeah.
attention.
Yeah, and so our council will be there tomorrow
Uh-huh.
too, and I think this is gonna be fun tomorrow. Yeah. So, afterwards, and on Friday, there's a conference call for our groundwater sustainability agency, and they wanna start to talk one-on-one coming out of that meeting, and we just happen to grab the first day afterwards, I guess, and, so we're gonna talk more about the QA and QC of those budgets. And so there'll be some time after this workshop tomorrow for the groundwater sustainability agencies to look at the data and perhaps, you know, kind of, you know, provide more information or challenge it or whatever.
Okay, is this the right time to give a report, or just an update on Valley Springs? That,
Yeah, I just want to make one last
Oh,
note, and it goes
okay.
to thought about, you know, groundwater recharge. And it basically, I just want to make a big note that subsurface flows from rivers, you know, even though we happen to have all the water flowing through our county, it's seen as a basin-wide benefit. So we can't, you know, in this case, I'd love to take credit for gravity, but we can't do so. So I just wanted to point that out too. So within these budgets, it's really going to be, yeah, it'll be more spread across the entire basin on those. You know, and so if there's a river running through an area and it's recharging, there's losses to those channels, you know, we'll get credit for it in some ways because it's going to be applied at a basin-wide level, but it'll really come down to how much is being pulled out, I think. So, yeah, and then you asked about why budgets are happening. You're talking about basin-wide scale or potentially GSA scale projects being done, and it'll allow for more flexibility for groundwater sustainability agencies to decide how they want to fund or finance projects going down the road. And, you know, I think it'll help with that decision-making process. So, these are my slides. So, yeah, I think, yeah, feel free to talk about Valley Springs.
well, Valley Springs Public Utilities District, as you know, relies entirely on groundwater pumping for their customers, but they have essentially, they've just stonewalled any involvement in this, and they're not returning telephone calls and stuff. And the letter explanation that you sent down to Allison and the group, that they have, I didn't realize that they have maintained all along that their geologist tells them that they're pulling out of a tertiary river channel or something, and you know, that they're not using groundwater, they're using underground rivers or something. So that's an interesting thing, but it's not really our responsibility to bring them in here, but the responsibility I feel is that they should be put on notice and sign a document saying that they know that they should be, but they aren't participating. So
That's going to be something.
I don't.
So we've reached out to the consultant and said, can you guys make a good effort to let them know this process is playing out? And I think at least we can document that we're making outreach within the county to those who may be affected, so.
You have Cameron involved in that process?
No, it's the consultant that's doing the whole coordination of the whole effort.
I think it'd be probably cheaper to have the consultant writing letters than Cameron at this point.
This may have been mentioned before, but there was an opportunity, as you look at that map that shows the geographic area that we're dealing with there, Peter mentioned nested monitoring wells, and I have some friends that own property down there, and I asked them, that we need some nesting or some nested test wells. Could we put one on your property? And they said, not only no, but hell no.
Yeah, I wish I had that graphic with where they proposed. I don't have it in this presentation, sorry.
So this whole process is being viewed by a lot of people with probably justifiable skepticism or trepidation.
Thanks, Peter, good job. Good to know.
Thank you, Peter. Oh, okay, you can give the same report next month.
I'll try to make these shorter. I'm glad Jeff wasn't here today. He's usually kind of.
Okay, my goodness, we have, it says here that no information is included in the packet for the general manager report, but I'd like to, before you start your report, I need to give you something so that this is your first board meeting, so we have to give you a uniform.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And now you can get to work, huh?
Thank you for that, Russ. I appreciate it. And obviously very glad to be here, giving my first GM report. I have to start off by thanking the staff, those that are here and those that aren't here. It's been a really intense and educational week, but I can't say enough about the team that we have here. I knew it was a strong team coming in, and they've been incredibly welcoming, and everybody's kind of just, I feel like they've gone out of their way to make me feel welcome and supported, and also getting me up to speed on everything I need to be getting up to speed on, which we're not done with that yet, but we're working on it. So really, just really grateful for the team that we have here. And thank you to the board for putting your confidence in me, and I'm really grateful to you as well. So I'll start off with that, and then let's get to work.
Michael, it goes both ways.
Oh.
We're very, very pleased and thankful that you're here.
Thank you. One really quick state legislative update. This is something you are all very familiar with, but there has been a recent development in the water tax process or effort, or more to the point, the effort opposing the water tax, which is that Aqua has been working very hard to develop an alternative to the water tax, and they've drafted bill language, came up with a proposal. I think importantly, California Municipal Utilities Association has been doing it jointly with Aqua. So it's an Aqua CMUA sponsored bill that was introduced by Senator Caballero on Friday, last Friday. And so it's SB 669. You'll be hearing a lot more about it. We'll be back probably at the next board meeting with a resolution of support for the board to consider. And based on the board's direction, we would probably undertake some other outreach efforts on that. And basically, the rough parameter of the proposal is just that it would create a drinking water trust using surplus state budget funds, and this is a record state surplus year, so it's a good year to do it in. So in years where the state has a budget surplus, using a portion of that surplus to invest into a trust, the proceeds from the trust, the principal from the trust would remain there. The proceeds would be used to fund water system improvements in DACs where they aren't getting clean water, reliable water service. And so the purpose is the same as the water tax. It's just a different funding mechanism that doesn't rely on water agencies taxing their customers and then sending the money to Sacramento. So very good. I think a very good solution. I know Aqua has worked very hard to develop this, and the partnership with CMUA makes it, I think, a much stronger bill. And Senator Caballero is a great author, I think. So I think that's a very positive development, but again, we'll bring that back to the board for consideration at the next meeting.
Where is the senator from?
Salinas,
Salinas?
right next door to Senator Monning's district, so I wonder how those neighborhood meetings are.
I'm from Salinas.
Are you?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, she's been active on this issue, and has worked closely. She's known as an active author. She's a good author to have run your bill, because she'll put in the legwork. Is the reputation she has. So I think that was a big win for Aqua.
Yeah. She's very engaged, and you see her on the news quite a bit.
And then along those lines, on the state legislative front, we'll be working, the legislative committee, myself, and our team will be preparing for meetings with our state representatives next week as a part of Aqua's legislative symposium. On the federal level, no legislative updates, not much moving at this point, although we are working hard to prepare for meetings in Washington with our representatives there early April. In the meantime, one of the things that I've been made aware of that is more of a pressing matter we'll be working on in the next week or so is compiling some projects that we may be able to use the Section 219 funding from a WRDA authorization from 10 years ago that has not been utilized yet. And we're at risk of potentially losing that authorization. So we're gonna work with Mia, pull some projects together, and if we have a proposal that fits the objective of that money, we'll make sure we can put it to use. And we're working in conjunction with the county on that.
How did that happen that we didn't
I don't know.
keep focused?
I think probably, honestly, I don't have an answer for you on that. I don't know. It's been around for a while, and the projects haven't been developed under that funding mechanism. So for one reason or another, all I know is where we're at now, and that we have a bit of a time crunch to pull some projects together and see if we can find some. I mean, the money is potentially very. It's on very favorable terms. It's a 75-25 match, and if it's just a question of whether we have projects that fit within the purpose of that money. So maybe I think it's been looked at over the years, but maybe we didn't have the projects and the funding didn't quite line up.
Peter, do you have an answer for Director Underhill's question?
I do. I think originally they looked at Cosgrove Creek and some conjunction projects, and things just kind of fell apart. Just not the momentum on it, the county and others, for a variety of reasons. But I think that was kind of the original proposal, but I think he's kind of funding or I don't know.
Deauthorization.
The authorization.
So if there's an opportunity now, it's now to try to propose something.
Yeah, and timing could have been everything, that's, you know.
Yeah,
uh,
and so we'll be working internally on some projects in coordination with Mia to make sure that we're looking at the right things, and then we'll bring that back to the board for a future meeting. One of the things that I've started to get my head around a little bit, but I've in a lot of discussions, especially with the management team, is a need for an internal organizational assessment. And we've had several conversations about it already, whether it's something we can do in-house or that we need some help with. It is something that was budgeted for in this fiscal year that hasn't happened yet, probably because of the turnover. So it's just, I think it was just put on hold. And I think for various reasons, I see some value in bringing in an outside set of eyes to to help us take a look at whether there's a better way to do what we're doing. So we've got a draft RFP prepared that we're circulating among the management team, and we'll move forward with that. And we'll keep you posted. One project, and some of this is forecasting for the next agenda, and I think what we'll end up doing is agendizing a presentation from a company called GreenGen that is proposing a very large pumped hydro project on the McCalmy River watershed, and we don't know a whole lot about it right now. They've provided us with some information. We have a lot of questions, and it's a big project. So it'll be very interesting to see how they anticipate it moving forward. But they've asked us for an agenda slot in the next board meeting to present what their project is, and they're also going to present to Amador Water Agency the following day. So we'll coordinate with President Thomas on that, but their request is to be on the next board meeting's agenda. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion
about that.
Yeah, I got emails last year from them, told them to contact staff.
Mm-hmm. And I know they've reached out to county officials as well, so they're pursuing it, and they've put some literature together, so they seem serious about developing the project, and I think it'll be a good time to bring them in and
Yeah.
ask some questions.
Cindy, did you get the 2 pages? There was,
I think so, just here today.
no, it was
We'll
sitting
get you a
on our-
copy.
Yeah,
We'll get you a copy, and there'll
Yeah.
be some more information
Uh-huh.
in the board packet, I imagine. So it's an introductory presentation. Like I said, we don't know a whole lot about it either, so this will be our first chance to get to know them. And then I think lastly, there was a well-attended Utica board meeting last night, including several of the people in the room here. And I think the obvious reason for the highest attendance at a UWPA board meeting that I've ever seen was a resolution on in their agenda packet to invite the agencies in the Highway 4 corridor to open a discussion or a study process or something along those lines of discussing some sort of restructuring. And there's no specific proposal on the table. It's an invitation to look at whether there might be a more efficient way to deliver services, water and wastewater services on the Highway 4 corridor. It was, I think, a good, productive discussion among the agencies that were represented there, and the Utica board ended up approving that resolution. So really very preliminary step, but I think the next step will be we, along with the other highway agencies on the Highway 4 corridor, will get letters of invitation to participate in this process. I think, in my experience, seeing that kind of coordination and a willingness to participate in that discussion among the agencies on Highway 4 has been very elusive. And so I think the demonstration of the act that the board took, the Utica board took last night was, I think it opens a potentially very unique opportunity that we should be involved in.
What was the action that they took?
It was just a resolution inviting agencies in the Highway 4 corridor to participate in a discussion, develop a process for moving forward, whether it's just discussions among the agencies themselves or possibly pursuing funding for a feasibility study, very open-ended, just an
Okay, well,
invitation to start a
That's
discussion.
great to see, really,
Yeah.
really is. And is there a next step? Did they come up with, and what, more importantly, what was the reaction in the room? More positive or negative?
I think overall, and I would like for some of the others that were there to chime in, overall, my sense on it was overall positive. There was some discontent with how it was rolled out and how it was done. But I think overall, the fact that the discussion is happening was, the response to that was positive, especially among the Utica board members. So that, I think, is a positive development. The next step would be, and I should have brought copies of the resolution, I apologize, but we'll get a letter from Utica with a copy of the resolution inviting participation in that discussion.
Great.
Okay, so what
Probably-
we're saying is that, you know, the other agencies, and these are the ones that belong to the Highway 4 group.
Plus others that were overlooked. For instance, the 39th Fair
Oh, yeah,
District.
the
you know,
agricultural
they've got-
district.
they've got,
Uh-huh.
issues that might be improved upon by participation in something like this. I think that if I could jump in here just to make one comment, that the people that were, they came there with questions about, why now, why didn't we have better warning? There was one change in the resolution that seemed to put everybody's fears at a lower level, was that they changed it from consolidation to collaboration. And so everybody would say, well, we don't want consolidation shoved down our throat, but it wasn't intended to be that. At least I didn't feel like it was, and I didn't have any prior knowledge of that, but it's a lot softer word if we talk about collaboration, because some of the agencies, and Cindy's very familiar with one of them, it doesn't need any help from all indications. So they just said, well, we don't need a crutch. We're doing fine. So anyway, you have anything to add?
Well, it did come out, we were given a 2-hour notice that they were putting this together, and I was disappointed that we didn't have more conversation during the Highway 4 committee meetings. That's what they're there for.
Uh-huh.
And I understand their need for doing it. I think it's something we should be looking at, but it shouldn't have been proposed. The resolution, in my opinion, was very formal. It used the word consolidation and a couple other words, but the consolidation, that's the big C word for some people. That I remember back in 2010, when I first started there, there was all this talk about, CCWD wants to take over, right?
Yeah. Oh.
So, these last 9 years, I'm thinking, no, everything's good, you know what I mean? Nobody's trying to do that. And then I get that notice, and just several other things that have been happening in the last few weeks. It's made me kind of sit up and go, are we missing something here? And so, I know our board is extremely, I don't want to say
Our board.
stressed, but
Our
Our
board.
board.
multi-sensory.
Okay.
So,
So I want to know which hat you're wearing when you're talking about this and throwing opinions
and,
out.
You want to wear a hat?
So, not we all, but several of the people that were there, at least with MSD, even supervisors were there. I think we were all just a little bit concerned And we all realize the conversation does need to take place. I think there's value there, but I don't think we like the idea of the way it was worded. So we they amended the resolution to where it's really the way it should have been said in the first place. This is a
Collaboration.
collaboration to discuss any ideas of reorganizing, consolidating, regionalizing, sharing resources, and that's really what the goal should have been. It was just a very formal, hold on kind of thing. So we're excited, and I'm hoping the way that it's gonna go forward is they'll send out this invitation, and we'll get the water managers at the table and discuss ideas, and just really put it out there, not be afraid to say, well, CCWD can take over everybody. You know what I mean? People are afraid to say some things that are really obvious, in my opinion. And let's say it and talk about it. And as long as we keep the priority of, we have to keep water in Calaveras County and do the best we can for our ratepayers. And then I'm good.
And use the water from Stanislaus. Yeah.
Either way, just,
Yeah.
keep the water here and let us be the ones that are in charge of it down the state.
And this will come back, Matt hasn't kicked me yet, but we are off agenda here. And this is obviously an issue that we're gonna talk a lot about when it is agendized, so I don't wanna get too far into it today. This was just an update as to what happened last night, and to let you know, we'll be receiving that letter. We'll bring it to the board for, discussion and direction to staff, and we can have a more robust discussion at that point.
Could I just ask one question before you take it away? That means that they are not going to be looking for a new general manager.
No, to my knowledge, I don't think they would put that on hold. I mean, this is a very first preliminary step in opening a dialogue. I think there's no, nobody has any idea where that's going to lead, so they need leadership in the interim. So to my knowledge, they're still
Probably need 2 or 3 people to replace you.
to my knowledge, they're still moving forward with that recruitment process.
Okay.
And we did just get copies of that more information, the little of information that we do have on the pumped hydro project, so I'll make sure everybody has it's a 2-page thing, so I'll make sure everybody has a copy of that. And I think that's it for now.
Okay, thank you very much for that report, Michael. It's long overdue. Okay, I've got copies of this. You got your copy from the meeting on
Yeah, I
Monday?
have the copy also.
All right, moving on. We have board reports. Bertha, do you want to start?
Oh, do I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. I just wanted to know, or tell the rest of the board members that I did send a sympathy card to Bob Geisler's family. Bob was a member of CCWD board from 91 to 99, and Scott attended the celebration for him and was telling me how wonderfully attended it was. But as I say, I did that on behalf of the board. Here is something that I just want to throw out. There is a person up in White Pines or up in Arnold who has fallen in love with the White Pines area, and she's speaking in terms of leaving something to White Pines Park in her will. I mean, how do we handle things like that? I mean,
Open arms.
And so she'll probably come back for specifics before she finalizes her will, but that would be wonderful. I mean, we could certainly use something like that. I had a question on, we got the final report on the audit. Are we through with that? Because there were recommendations. There were recommendations.
I'm not sure how much I can speak because this isn't agendized, but
Not much.
Quick responses are there.
This is the exact same letter that you received during the presentation by Brian Nass during the audit. All they did is finalize it.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, was that quick enough? Okay, I just got an update on our customer assistance program. Our sewer users went up to 131. So that means we only need 69 more, and we'll hit our 200. And our water, of course, we know is 200. So I think that's great news, and maybe Scott will take me out to lunch. Okay, and I want to leave this. I did get an organization chart from TUD, and so is there any way to enlarge that? Look at what they did. Okay, that's it.
Go ahead, sir.
And regarding the customer assistance program, Bertha did pay me in a public meeting at the camera meeting last week, so that was, congratulations to her. She finally came to the table. It is lunch money. It's our little $5 bet. And I will be attending the Aqua legislative meeting for the morning session next week as well. Looking forward to that. That's all I got.
Okay.
I had something.
Yes, go ahead.
I attended the TSAN, IRWM, JPA, and the WAC, but for CCWD, I attended the JPA. So during that meeting, there was a lot of discussion and approvals going on. We had a presentation on the Tuolumne Resource Conservation District, their project, how it's going. They have a lot of money still available. They've been doing a lot of, I just lost it. Presentation gardens, what's it called? Demonstration garden, that's what it is. And so they've been doing a lot of those in the Tuolumne area. They've also been doing a lot of projects on rainwater capture and reuse. They put at the fairgrounds in Tuolumne, they put in a new water resource system there that for during the fair, all the rainwater that's been captured will be used to give water to all the animals during the whole fair, which is a really cool thing. They've also offered that to Calaveras County. They haven't been receptive to it yet for whatever reasons, but anyhow, so those opportunities are out there. They're doing really well. We also approved a GIS for a stormwater mapping system to help grantees prepare grants with this information. That was something that the WAC group really liked. And with the budget, they have a surplus of $6,000. They did a restructuring of how they charge fees for membership. So that resulted in $6,000 coming in more than they planned. And so that was a real plus. We also had a lot of discussion in the WAC group anyway, regarding the disadvantaged community involvement. That's moving along for the Tuolumne Stanislaus, the plan that they're putting together. It was Sierra Institute who is putting the plan together for us, working with the different groups, or IRWM groups. And they're working on the human capacity of each disadvantaged community and stuff like that. So there was a lot of discussion in the group with that. The JPA didn't make any decision, but anyhow, we're moving along on disadvantaged community.
Okay, and we will be impacted by, or we will get information on that for our disadvantaged communities as part of the.
Well, unfortunately, CCWD does have some, but it's over in that Highway 4 corridor. The other portion over here, which I see for like West Point, they're not in the Tuolumne Stanislaus, they're in the Colony River.
Right.
Right, Peter? And I don't do that one. But yes, I mean, there are funds out there. I just don't know what the MAC IRWM is doing.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report.
Okay, the only thing that I have to report is that I went last week to the Aqua Groundwater Committee meeting, first one of those that I have attended in Sacramento. Aqua World headquarters. It was a very enjoyable thing to do. And then we had an interesting conference call this morning to try to develop a game plan, like minute by minute, what we're going to do in Washington, D.C. And Director Davidson said that he has made arrangements to stay at a hotel called the Pod. And it sounded like to me, he mentioned that it was kind of like camping out. So
Yeah. I can envision
he-
that, something like that,
He
yeah.
may be sleeping in a drawer, I don't know. But we should give him an award for, being diligent and saving the district money. Maybe we can give him a pillow that he could take with him. But anyway, I'm excited about being able to go back there. And I just have to say that I have seldom seen or been associated with anybody that is as small in stature as Mia is, that has such a big personality, and she just goes. I mean, she's really a wonderful, effective person. We're lucky to have her working for us.
I've been really impressed with her so far, and she outlined this morning a 2-day rough agenda that had Peter and Joel and I looking at each other going, how is that all gonna fit? But, so we'll certainly be making the best possible use of our time there with what she's got lined up for us.
She doesn't use elevators either. She'll be using the staircase the entire time.
I'll meet her at the top.
Could I just add one thing?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to also congratulate Michael on, well-done meeting. This was,
And welcome.
Yes.
Good job.
We expect to see you in that hat from time to time. There you go. Looks good on you. Okay, we have just 2 things on the agenda listing next meetings. Next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 13th at 1 p.m. at our regular board time, and then again on March 27th at 1 p.m. And at that, there will be some discussion at that the 27th meeting about reconfirming our priorities for Washington, what we want to accomplish in Washington, just to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction on the same rope. So that's good, instead of pushing on a rope. Okay, the next item on our agenda is 9A. That's a closed session. We have a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, and we will be back to report as required. Public comment to end up? Joe, you have any final thing? No? Okay. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.